From Barracks to Power, the real story of Sani Abacha. Origins of a quiet force. In 1943, in the ancient city of Kano, northern Nigeria, Sani Abacha was born into a traditional Hausa family shaped by discipline and cultural order. The streets of Kano were alive with trade and movement, but within his home, structure and restraint defined daily life. From an early age, Abacha showed a reserved personality. He was not drawn to noise or attention. Instead, he observed, listened, and internalized the world around him. Education introduced him to a wider Nigeria, but it was the military that gave him direction. At the Nigerian Military Training College, he began to develop the habits that would define him: precision, silence, and control. Further training abroad exposed him to structured command systems, reinforcing his belief in hierarchy and authority. At a time when Nigeria was still finding its identity after independence, the military offered opportunity. For Abacha, it was more than a career, it was a system where power could be understood, shaped, and eventually controlled. Quietly, without spectacle, his journey into influence had begun. Forged in conflict. Nigeria's early years were marked by instability, and the military quickly became central to governance. As a young officer, Abacha rose steadily through the ranks, building a reputation for reliability rather than charisma. During the Nigerian Civil War, discipline became survival. The battlefield demanded focus, and Abacha adapted to its harsh realities without hesitation. Unlike many officers who sought recognition, Abacha remained in the background. He followed orders, executed tasks efficiently, and built trust among superiors. His calm presence during tense operations made him valuable. He was not the loudest voice, but he was often the most dependable. Coups began to define Nigeria's political landscape. Governments were overthrown with alarming frequency, and the line between military duty and political power blurred. Abacha found himself involved in several of these transitions, not as the public face, but as a key organizer. This role gave him something more powerful than visibility: it gave him influence. He understood the mechanics of power shifts, how alliances formed, and how authority could be taken without chaos. Step by step, he positioned himself where decisions were made. The kingmaker emerges. By the 1980s, Abacha had become one of the most influential figures within Nigeria's military structure. He worked closely with leaders like Muhammadu Buhari and later Ibrahim Babangida, holding positions that placed him at the center of national power. He was present during key coups that reshaped leadership, including those that brought Buhari and later Babangida into power. While others addressed the nation, Abacha ensured the machinery behind those announcements functioned perfectly. Logistics, loyalty, coordination, he mastered them all. His strength was subtle control. He built relationships within the armed forces, ensuring that loyalty to him ran deep. Soldiers respected his discipline. Officers trusted his judgment. Over time, he became indispensable. Abacha was no longer just participating in power, he was shaping it. His understanding of military hierarchy allowed him to influence outcomes without exposing himself to public scrutiny. By remaining behind the scenes, he avoided criticism while strengthening his grip internally. But as Nigeria moved toward a possible democratic transition in the early 1990s, the environment began to change, and so did his role within it. Democracy interrupted. In 1993, Nigeria stood on the edge of democratic transformation. Citizens participated in what was widely regarded as a fair election, believed to have been won by Mashood Kashimawo Alawale Abiola. For many, it was a moment of hope, a chance to move beyond military rule. That hope was short-lived. The election results were annulled, plunging the nation into crisis. Protests erupted across cities. Trust in leadership collapsed. Nigeria became tense, uncertain, and deeply divided. An interim government led by Ernest Shonekan was established, but it lacked authority. It struggled to maintain order, and its legitimacy was widely questioned. Amid this instability, Abacha remained calm. He watched the situation unfold, analyzing its weaknesses. The government was fragile. The military still held real power. And the country was searching for direction. For years, Abacha had stayed behind the curtain. But now, the conditions had changed. The system he understood so well was collapsing in front of him. And this time, he would not remain in the shadows. The seizure of power. In November 1993, Abacha acted. The transition was swift and precise, reflecting years of preparation. Without prolonged conflict, he removed the interim government and declared himself head of state. It was a takeover executed with military efficiency, calculated, controlled, and decisive. Once in power, he dissolved democratic institutions and ruled by decree. Authority became centralized, and decisions flowed directly from his office. There was no room for opposition within the structure he created. Critics were detained. Media outlets faced restrictions. Political activity was tightly controlled. The atmosphere shifted as fear began to shape public behavior. Conversations became cautious. Trust became limited. Yet, daily life continued. Markets remained open. Cities functioned. For some citizens, there was a sense of order returning, even as freedoms diminished. Abacha governed with a firm hand, maintaining control through discipline and enforcement. His leadership style reflected his military background, structured, uncompromising, and focused on stability above all else. But beneath that structure, tensions continued to build, both within Nigeria and beyond its borders. Pressure and controversy. As Abacha's rule continued, criticism intensified both domestically and internationally. Reports of financial misconduct began to surface, involving large sums of money allegedly moved out of Nigeria. These allegations would later become widely known as the Abacha loot. At the same time, human rights concerns grew. The execution of activist Ken Saro-Wiwa in 1995 drew global condemnation. Governments around the world imposed sanctions, isolating Nigeria economically and politically. Inside the country, resistance did not disappear, it adapted. Activists found quieter ways to express opposition. Citizens navigated a system where caution was necessary. Abacha responded by tightening control. Security forces maintained strict oversight, ensuring that dissent did not grow into open rebellion. Despite increasing pressure, he did not show signs of retreat. Instead, his leadership became more rigid. The system he built depended on control, and he maintained it with consistency. But control under constant pressure creates strain. And over time, that strain begins to affect everything, including the stability it was meant to protect. Absolute authority. By the late 1990s, Abacha had consolidated power to an extraordinary degree. The military, government institutions, and key economic structures were firmly under his control. Decisions were centralized, and loyalty within the system remained strong. There were indications that he intended to extend his rule beyond military leadership. Plans for a transition into a civilian presidency began to take shape, with political structures aligning in his favor. Publicly, his authority appeared secure. There were no visible threats strong enough to challenge his position. The system functioned under his command. Yet beneath that surface, uncertainty lingered. International pressure had not eased. Internal tensions remained present, even if not openly expressed. Abacha maintained his composed demeanor. He rarely appeared emotional, rarely reacted publicly to criticism. His leadership style remained consistent, controlled, calculated, and deliberate. He had reached the height of his power. From a quiet officer in Kano to the leader of Africa's most populous nation, his rise was complete. But power at its peak is often more fragile than it appears. The sudden end. On June 8, 1998, the unexpected happened. Sani Abacha died suddenly at the presidential villa in Abuja. The official cause was recorded as a heart attack. The news spread quickly across Nigeria and beyond. For many, it was shocking. A leader who had maintained such tight control was gone without warning. Almost immediately, speculation began. While the official explanation remained cardiac arrest, alternative theories circulated among the public. Some suggested natural causes linked to stress. Others proposed unverified claims of foul play. Despite the uncertainty, one fact was clear: his rule had ended abruptly. There was no gradual transition. No prepared exit. Power shifted overnight. The system he had built, which depended heavily on his presence, began to change almost immediately. His absence created space for a different direction. In a single moment, years of control came to an end, leaving behind questions, reactions, and a nation ready for its next chapter. Transition and recovery. Following Abacha's death, leadership passed to Abdulsalami Abubakar, who quickly initiated changes. Political prisoners were released, restrictions were eased, and plans for democratic elections were accelerated. Nigeria began transitioning back to civilian rule. Within a year, democratic governance was restored, marking a significant shift from years of military control. Investigations into financial activities during Abacha's rule were launched. Over time, large sums of money were recovered from foreign accounts, confirming aspects of earlier allegations. The country faced the challenge of rebuilding trust, within institutions and among its people. The effects of years of centralized control did not disappear instantly. Abacha's legacy became a subject of debate. Some viewed his rule as a period of order in a time of instability. Others saw it as a time marked by repression and lost opportunity. Nigeria moved forward, but the impact of his leadership remained part of its history, complex, influential, and still discussed. The meaning of his legacy. The story of Sani Abacha is one of contrast. It is a story of discipline and control, but also of controversy and consequence. He rose through the military not by seeking attention, but by mastering systems. He understood power at its core, how it is built, how it is maintained, and how it can influence an entire nation. His rule demonstrated the strength of centralized authority, but also revealed its limitations. Control can create order, but it can also suppress voices and create tension beneath the surface. His sudden death marked not just the end of a leader, but the end of an era. It forced Nigeria to confront its direction and redefine its future. Today, his legacy remains part of national and global discussions about leadership, governance, and accountability. His story is not just about one man. It is about power itself, its rise, its impact, and its inevitable end. If you enjoyed the story of From Barracks to Power, the real story of Sani Abacha, like this video and subscribe for more African legends and forgotten histories. Share this story, and tell us in the comments which African legend we should tell next.